Welcome, welcome, my friends, to another Sunday sermon. I don't know what we're doing here. I don't know why you're back, but I greatly appreciate it. So, I just wanted to start off by saying thank you. Thank you for pushing me to do this. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for watching. All of that. Thank you. This is your thing. I'm just the caretaker of it. Oh, Bale, thanks for the subscription. It is much appreciated. And yeah, I really enjoy doing this, and I'm glad that you guys enjoy hanging out. So, the first season may have seemed, I don't want to say scattershot, but it was certainly eclectic. Let's put it that way. Let's go with eclectic. But there was a method to my madness. And I wanted to introduce you to a lot of stories that I feel are going to make a great backbone for what we're going to talk about this season. And this season, we are going to we're going to dig in to the gospel according to Riff. What I am willing to accept as, what a new, we'll call it a newfound dogma, a new theology, if you will, a new way of looking at these stories that we have seen and that we all know and that they've influenced everybody's life. And I think I've hit upon something that I feel like they've been missing all this time. Something that is so painfully obvious when you look at it that it seems almost obvious to me. Now, it's a little fantastic. Some might even say heretical. But that's okay. Because we're just looking at a different point of view here. And so, if you think I am mocking Christianity or attempting to tear it down by its very tenets, I am not. I am merely pointing the flame, if you will, at a different part of the room that I feel like isn't well illuminated. And I'm big fan of passive aggressive heresy. Yeah, I just like this is like, I think some of this stuff is almost obvious. And one of the things that we are going to do here is we are going to slaughter sacred cows. We are going to grill those fuckers up and we are going to eat those steaks of blasphemy. And they're going to be delicious. Because we are looking for the truth here, not an ideology to follow. I think we're all decent people here. I think we know what we want out of life. We don't need Bedouin fairy tales to teach us morality. But if they're going to play such a prominent part in the public sphere, I feel like it's only fair to analyze them. And to analyze them at face value. Don't let them off the hook. See, that's what a lot of people do. They look at the Bible, and there's a lot of crazy contradictory shit in there, and they decide to look past all that because they want to believe. That is the most unscientific thing ever. You can't just want to believe. You need to actually study and focus. And if you believe, fine. If you don't believe, fine. But look at the actual text that's there, not all of this stuff that people put in there to serve their own purpose. Yes, we both have truths. Are yours the same as mine? Yeah, it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, this the book gets away with so much stuff that any other ancient manuscript would be just torn apart for all the textual and contextual inaccuracies. So that's all we're doing here. We're giving it the fair shake. We are being fair and balanced, like our friends at Fox News. I almost got that out. So, without further ado, let us begin to talk about the gospel according to Riff. And we've got our big space dragon. And the reason I've titled that a series of failed caretakers is that's really kind of my philosophy here. So let me break it down to you in really simple terms, give you the big arching overview, and then we're going to eat this elephant a bite at a time. Every week, we're going to delve a little more into the gospel according to Riff and kind of flush things out, and I'll have a more detailed story that will kind of reinforce what I'm talking about. So let's start at the beginning, the very beginning, because it's a very good place to start. We know the creation story. We've all heard it. God created the heavens and the earth from nothing, and that in 6 days he created the earth. The seventh day he rested. That's why we celebrate the Sabbath. Blah, blah, blah. We all know that story. What most people don't know is that's the creation reboot story that happens about 6 chapters into Genesis. The original, the OG creation story that starts on page 1, verse 1, it's a little problematic for hardcore creationists. Like, I'm not even going to say his name. You know who I mean. The asshole down there with his giant ark who wants to build more shit on taxpayer dollars, no less, and discriminate against people when he employs them. But that's neither here nor there. That's for a different sermon. He and a lot of these young earth creation folks don't like the original creation story, the very beginning. And the main reason I think that they don't like it, yeah, he could fill up a sermon. I may do one. I may just take him apart one week. I don't really want to do hatchet jobs, but I feel like if anybody deserves one, it's him. But, yeah, and the original creation story, the one that's right there, verse 1, page 1, that is kind of problematic for young earth creationists. Because it makes it sound like the fucking God of heaven and earth is a goddamn alien. I'm going to say it again. If you read the first 3 chapters of the Bible, or the first 3 verses of Genesis, and you don't think that El, as we're going to call him, all right, short for Elohim, the exalted one, he's a fucking alien. He's got to be. It just doesn't make any sense any other way. Why is that? Let's start with the very beginning, first verse in the book. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, sure. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Wait. Didn't say anything about water. What did he wait, is he hovering over the waters? The earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. If that doesn't make you think of a guy in a spaceship flying over this void, this giant ball of water that he has found, and wouldn't that actually make more sense? Wouldn't it? I know we're taking huge, fantastic leaps of logic here, but let's go. Let's do that. If we're willing to believe that there's a supernatural being that can magically just create everything in existence from speaking it into existence, well, isn't it just as plausible that there is an alien traveling through space looking to conduct evolutionary experiments, but he needs the right conditions to do those experiments, and he finds this ball of water out in the cosmos and realizes that this thing is it. This is where he can do his big experiment that he's been planning on. I think it's just as plausible, and so that's what I'm going to believe. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and he called the darkness night. And there was evening and there was morning on the first day. And then God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." Now, this is another thing that a lot of people don't talk about. What's up, Kurt? Welcome, welcome. So, you've got this big ball of water. And as you can see on the diagram there, God creates the sky. And then he pulls this big glob of water up and basically suspends it almost like an atmosphere around the earth. If you talk to a lot of really hardcore evangelical Christians, they will tell you that is why people lived to be 900 years old in the Bible, is because they had this double atmosphere that allowed them to grow bigger and run without getting tired, and they've got all this stuff. There's no fucking evidence that any of that is remotely possible. But they will also tell you, remember the flood? Remember the flood? They will tell you that's where the water came from. That during the flood, God released the waters above the firmament. That's what actually flooded the earth. And that's why people don't live to be 900 anymore and all that shit. What they fail to do is understand how timelines work in a story. And long after the flood, we've got Moses and Aaron and, you know, the homies leaving Egypt and that whole thing. Those guys are all listed as living to be incredibly old too. So the whole double atmosphere thing really doesn't make any fucking sense. But they love it. But yeah. So we've got an alien. His name is L, and he wants to conduct an experiment. So he's terraforming the earth to make it suitable to put these little beings on, and he's going to see what these beings do. Because he's curious. And he likes the beings. You've got to think that he's thinking of them, you know how people who really love their pets, that's kind of the relationship L has with us. And if that makes you really upset about Christianity, you either don't like your pets enough, or you severely overestimate your place in the world. Because if there is an all-knowing, all-powerful being, whether he be an alien or a deity, whatever you want to call it, trust me, he don't like you as much as you want him to like you. It is awfully pompous of us to think out of a being with the ability to create worlds out of nothing would be all that fucking impressed by some hairless apes. He's not impressed. Stop trying to make yourself cool. We will go on in the gospel how unimpressed he is with us. So, we remember these guys, right? Our pure nightmare fuel here. Angels. Has he seen Roman Reigns? He is a specimen. Angels were the original caretakers. See, L, our homeboy, he's busy. He's got shit to do. He's got, you know, he's running a whole planet here. He's experimenting, and he doesn't want to. We're led to believe, too, that, you know, they always talk about how he radiates. Maybe he's radioactive. Maybe it's not good for us to be in his presence. You know, whatever the case, he doesn't do a lot of direct one-on-one. He does with Adam. We're led to believe that he talks directly to Adam. Hold on, some of his creation is being awfully chirpy in my ear. He radiates sexual energy. He's smolder. So, you know, he creates these angels. And he's like, hey, guys, you got to take care of my new pets, okay? That's your job. And some of the angels are really into the pets. They really dig them. And some of the angels are not so into the pets. We remember this guy, Azazel. And we also remember them getting super horny with the daughters of men. You're fucking up his experiment now. Because now he's got these weird hybrids on his planet. He didn't want those. And he can't trust his caretakers now. His caretakers have screwed up the whole fucking experiment. Because if you remember your Garden of Eden story, there was, you know, the snake, or maybe it was Azazel in a different form. He, tells Adam and Eve, why shouldn't you be the same as El? You know, what makes him so much better than you? Eat this fruit, and you'll end up just as good as him. They eat the knowledge of good and evil and immediately realize that they're naked. They develop a sense of shame. And they also understand the world in a way that no one ever has before. And what I really think El didn't want is for them to realize that he wasn't actually a deity, that he's just a guy using technology. Why would he want to keep them ignorant unless it's kind of a Truman Show thing? And if they get enlightened, they'll realize that this is all just a big fucking experiment. He's not, a god. He's a guy in a spaceship that has some cool shit. And, that can be a little much for people. But, that they changed the equation. So now he's got these hybrids on his planet that he does not want. So he responds in a completely rational way and drowns everyone. We remember that. So, it did seem like a dick move on God's part. As we've discussed in the Sunday sermons, there's a lot of dick moves on God's part. But yeah, the knowledge of good and evil thing, I've seen it framed by some people as that is actually a story that the church uses to tell you why science is bad. Because science makes God less amazing because you know how shit works. And to me, it's absolutely what's going on here. Is El does not want the subjects of his experiment to realize they're in an experiment and that he's not this divine being. He's just a guy who's, studying the evolutionary process. So now he's drowned everybody. He started over because, he's saved his 8 specimens that he liked, Noah and his family. He's drowned everybody else because the angels screwed it up. But he needs new caretakers. He needs new caretakers to watch out for the people. Yeah, no shame, no problems. We're led to believe that before that, people didn't have to work, that the fruit, basically the fields kind of grew themselves. There was no toil. If you really want to take it further, there are people who claim that childbirth was not painful at that time, that, and that there were not menstrual cycles, that all of that is a punishment for disobedience. Basically, everything bad is a punishment, and everything good is what we had before we just wanted to know a little bit more. But yeah, so now El needs new caretakers. The angels were not good. So he decides he's gonna make dragons. Think about this. Dragons have been venerated and worshipped in almost every country on the planet. Oh, every culture has dragon mythology. And dragon mythology was these cultures, we know that these cultures had this dragon mythology at a time that they did not have contact with each other. How could isolated civilizations come up with the same mythology at the same time for something that doesn't exist? And so, how did we all get this dragon myth? Well, it would make sense if El created a bunch of dragons and was like, hey, you guys, you're my liaisons to the people. You talk to the people as my representatives and keep them in line, keep them doing what I want them to do, because I don't want them to all die again. I just had to start over, and, just do your thing. Some other things that I think hint that dragons were what Yahweh was just, he wasn't anything special. He was the dragon that happened to be assigned to the Hebrews. And the Chinese had their dragons, Cambodians had their dragons, everybody had their own dragons. Dragon attack is a praise hymn. I will die on that hill. When the ancient Jews translated the word seraphim into Greek, the word they used was drakon, which is where our modern word dragon is derived from. I don't think that's, a mistake. You read the text in the ancient Greek, they're talking about fucking dragons. We decided that angels should be, handsome men with wings and white robes. The text does not describe handsome men with white robes. The flood story in Genesis, a lot of biblical scholars believe that it's a retelling of far older versions. Like almost every story in the Bible, we've talked about this in season 1. Gilgamesh and all all these stories, the Bible is recycling of these fairy tales. They just put their own stamp on it, and these ones got popular, kind of like Disney fairy tales. The real Little Mermaid is some gritty shit, but if you asked 10 people what the story of the Little Mermaid was, 8 of them were going to give you the Disney version. That's what's going on here. Yeah, there was a god named Enlil, and he's subservient to a greater god called the Great Serpent Dragon of Heaven. And fuck yes, I'm in. So, Yahweh is probably just a dragon. He is a dragon that has been assigned to the Hebrews, and Yahweh fucks up. Kind of all the dragons do. Why? Because the people start worshiping them. And the people assume that they're the creator, not the messengers. China, they worshipped dragons. The Hebrews, I'm telling you, they missed the point, and they kind of combined Yahweh and El together. And that had to frustrate El to the point that eventually there's no dragons anymore. In fact, there's no even, hint that dragons ever existed, except for the fact that everybody knows about them and talked about them. Because, El pushed the reset button again. Another little thing that I think plays in... yeah! He oversold it. Don't make something as rad as a dragon and then tell people not to worship it. A talking fucking dragon? Hell yes. And if you remember... The 10 Commandments, the very first commandment is, thou shalt have no other God but me. My dad would love that Yahweh and El is John Elway. No other gods before me. And a key part of that is, do not make a graven image. Don't make an idol. Idol worship explicitly forbidden, mainly because that's what everybody else did, was worshipped idols, right? So the God's people, they were being set aside. Don't worship idols, except for the Nehushtan. The only one Yahweh ever lets them have is a flying fiery serpent, the Nehushtan. And if you don't know this story, what happens is the people were grumbling. Yahweh is pissed. And he responds in the common soft touch that dragons are known for by calling more dragons. And these little mini dragons come and start biting everyone. And people start dying left and right. Trump is not a dragon. Do not besmirch dragons with that nonsense. I'm going to shut that down right now. And he... you guys fucking threw me off here with Trump dragons. And so Yahweh, the people grumbled. Yahweh sends flying tiny little dragons to bite everybody. And everyone starts dying because they're poisonous. And it's a bad scene. And Moses begs Yahweh to knock it off. And Yahweh goes, the Nehushtan. So Yahweh goes, all right, make a bronze image of me, of one of the little flying serpents, and put it on a pole. And to anybody who gets bit by one of the flying dragons, if they look at that, they won't die. And sure enough, people don't die. It starts to become worshipped. To the point that it eventually ends up in Solomon's temple. And again, Yahweh never says, you don't need that anymore. I called off the flying dragon. Never once does Yahweh tell them, get rid of that dragon. Get rid of that little flying dragon idol. You don't need it anymore. Why don't they need it anymore? Well, maybe because it's the one actual image of him. And the idol gets broken during the first sacking of the temple. And what happens after that? A bunch of bad shit if you're a Jew. So I'm just saying, like, the curse of Yahweh may be real. Like, they broke his statue, he got pissed, and we've seen how he responds. It's not well. He doesn't deal well with frustration. So, that's where we're at right now. And so I feel like that is a good intro to the gospel according to Riff. And it again kind of sets the stage for the story that we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a short little Bible story. And I wanted to give you that backstory because chronologically, this Bible story we're going to do, it basically is what comes next. Yeah, she broke your Lego set. That is uncool. I think that's the 11th commandment, is don't fuck with his Lego sets. But, you know, you didn't strike her with fiery, you didn't hit her with a space laser. You didn't call down the space laser on her. Because you have better rage control than a dragon. You know, it just... So anyway, we've had the flood now. Everybody's dead. Yahweh is starting over. Yahweh has got his people. That's kind of where we're at. Well, Yahweh hasn't really been introduced yet for this story. The people of the earth have started to rebuild. We are 700 years after the flood now. Bible timeline. I don't know how that translates to real world timeline. I believe someone said this is like 2950 BC would be the best guess. So we're way back. Everybody speaks the same language and everybody works together fairly well collectively since the flood. You know, it's basically like a more of a large clan than a real, you know, anything that you wouldn't consider family. So there's a lot of people, and they're going to start building cities and branching out among the world. And they've got a leader, and this guy is Shamgar level badass. There are few people ever mentioned as being as cool as this fucking guy was. Then in the Bible, very few people are ever mentioned as cool as this fucking cat. Yet, you know his name, but you know it as a pejorative. Because if I called you his name, you would take it as an insult. Post-tragedy patriotism. That's exactly what we're going with here. That's exactly what we're going with. That name is a good name. He was a mighty man. The greatest hunter to have ever walked the face of the earth. Your friend and mine. That's right, kids. We're going to talk about Nimrod. And I hear you saying, but Riff, Nimrod, that's like a name for a dumbass. That's what you'd call some numbnuts. You wouldn't call a cool person Nimrod. You're fucking right, you would, until goddamn Bugs Bunny ruined it for everybody. Triple H, he's a pretty good hunter. But yeah, Bugs Bunny and ignorance ruined a perfectly cromulent name. Nimrod was a badass. The Bible takes out the time to tell you that this dude was a mighty man, that he founded a whole ton of cities, and he was a mighty hunter. That even God was impressed with this dude's hunting ability. So why do we think of it as a pejorative? It's Bugs fucking Bunny. Nimrod, some people believe that Nimrod was a giant, but there's no text to really back that up. It's kind of a weird contextual thing. So some people do, that is a theory that has been floated. But why do we think Nimrod is a pejorative? Well, that would be our friend Chuck Jones, who wrote many great Bugs Bunny episodes. And in a Bugs Bunny episode, One of the first times Bug Bunny encounters Elmer Fudd. Elmer Fudd is skulking through the woods with his trusty gun. He's wabbit hunting. He's looking around. Bug spies him from behind. And you see our writer here, he was a very, very clever guy. Thought it would be a great Bible reference to have Bugs Bunny point at Elmer Fudd and go, oh, look at this, we got Nimrod over here. It's actually a good joke. He's, sarcastically invoking the greatest hunter to ever live and, contextually contrasting that with Elmer Fudd's inadequacy. That was the joke. And it's a great joke. I've seen the episode many times. He goes, hey, look at Nimrod over here. And that is the first time most people actually heard the name Nimrod. A lot of them were kids or adults who did not get the Bible reference, so they just assumed that Nimrod meant a numbskull, an idiot, a buffoon, especially when the first person you've ever heard or referred to as a Nimrod is Elmer Fudd. And so now it's taken over in the lexicon, and if you call someone, oh, hey, look at Nimrod over here, they're just going to assume you're insulting them. But actually, you're saying this dude was the greatest hunter to ever live. So, we get right here in Genesis, again, this is early on. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who became a mighty warrior on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, Calneh, and Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Calah, and Rezin, which is between Nineveh and Calah, which is the great city. Yeah, King Cush. He's got a strain or two, I'm sure. But yeah, right there. This guy sounds like a fucking badass. This is a black metal treasure trove right here, this slide. But, I mean, seriously, how badass is this guy? They make it a point to tell you 3 times that this guy fucks shit up on the hunter, as a hunter, and he founded all these cities. I mean, Babylon, everybody's heard of Babylon. Nineveh, just about everybody's heard of Nineveh. He's founding these cities that would become the fucking most important cities to mankind. And now his name is a joke because a Bugs Bunny joke didn't land. It's fucking infuriating. This guy's clearly awesome. But now we get to the character assassination part of Nimrod. This is really all that's ever mentioned of Nimrod in the Bible. But the Talmud, well, they decided that somebody needed to get blamed for something bad that happened. And they decided that Nimrod was the guy. He might have been this guy. But I will now argue that we're going to assume the position here, folks, that Nimrod is the guy that the Talmud says did the thing that we're going to talk about here in a second. I'm going to argue that what Nimrod did was perfectly logical, perfectly plausible, and that he has been unfairly maligned. This is a pro-Nimrod thing. We are going to rehabilitate Nimrod's image. So let's go on. Now, Genesis. We're going to talk about the Tower of Babel. Most people have at least a basic understanding of the Tower of Babel. It is conjectured that people were going to build a tower so high that it went up into heaven because they were going to go talk to God that way. They were just going to build a tower straight up to God. And that God punished them by scrambling up everybody's language, and that's why people speak different languages. And some people claim that that's when God created different races, because there's some horrible people and they use that thread horribly. Don't talk to those people. If someone tells you that, don't talk to those people. And they claim that it was done because the people were proud and thought they could just build a tower right into heaven. That's a lot of hooey. That is a lot of conjecture, and it's a lot of bullshit. What does the actual text say? Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. This is why Nimrod's getting attached, because if you remember, they said that his kingdom went to Shinar. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be scattered over the face of the whole earth." The ladder to heaven is definitely there. Now, the Talmud takes this passage and treats it just a little differently. But the Gentile nations of the world are not so. "I granted greatness to Nimrod, yet he said, 'Come, let us build a city and a tower, with its top in heaven. Let us make for ourselves a name.'" Yeah, so they basically, after the biblical 9/11, that was the fucking, after the biblical 9/11 that happened, we got the people, they're traumatized. They say, "We're going to get all scattered again. Let's build a great city here, and we're going to build this big tower." Now, a lot of people like to go with the idea that they wanted to build that tower into heaven so that they could kind of be on par with God, and that God punished them. But let's think about this logically, folks. Do we really think that they thought they could build a tower all the way into heaven? Maybe they thought that. Or maybe, follow me here, maybe they were living with the trauma of every time it rained, they wondered, was this the time? Is this the time when it happens again and it just doesn't stop raining and we all die again? Is this the fucking time? Imagine living that way. The constant reminder of this horrific event that happened. And then along comes this guy Nimrod, who's kicking major ass. He's like Gaston, but not a rapist. And all of a sudden, he says, "Hey guys, I got an idea. What if we built a really tall tower that we could take refuge in if it started raining? So that if a flood starts to come again, we can get into the tower for safety." And they said, "That's a great idea. Let's build this tower so that we can be safe in case Yahweh decides to leave the water on again." Why does it have to be a negative? Why? There's no mention that the tower was, this was going to get us into heaven. They were saying we were going to build a tower into the heavens. I feel like it's really harsh to try to pin that, always to try to say that there's a negative connotation there. Maybe no one builds like Nimrod, no one thrills like Nimrod. We're going to have to rework that whole song now. And yeah, so, why are we so hell-bent on assigning negative to these people? Because the only negative in the story seems to come from the editorializing. The actual text doesn't really seem to support that. We're going back to the Talmud here. This is the Pisakim. A divine voice emerged and said to him, "Wicked man, son of a wicked man, the disciple and corruption of Nimrod the wicked, who caused the entire world to rebel against me during his reign by advising the generation of the dispersion to build a tower in order to fight the hosts of heaven." Who the fuck said anything about fighting heaven? Like, I get, was Nimrod that much of a badass that they were like, if he gets near heaven, he's going to take over? Maybe. Maybe Nimrod was that badass that they were like, we gotta clip this dude's wings. He's too fucking cool. If he gets up to heaven, all hell's gonna break loose. But again, I never actually saw I never actually saw any. You ever just build a tower to fight God? That's what they're going with. Which again, if you're honest, Nimrod just became like massive fanfic for like 8 billion black metal fans. So there's, this is Peter Bruegel's painting of the Tower of Babel. Sure doesn't look like you're going to go fight God in that thing. It sure more looks like, hey, if it floods, we won't all die because we can go to higher ground. But what do I know? I'm just a guy. Let's look at the text, though, because again, it kind of seems like God is being a dick. Oh, dude, you don't want to know how many times I've had Shamgar Nimrod tag team matches in my head. I've spent way too much time thinking about that. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, this is in red because it's important. If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Why is that bad again? Why people working together collectively are limitless. So come, let us go down. Notice it doesn't say let me go down. Doesn't say me, says us. You know what us is? It's a plural. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. So the Lord scattered them from there all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Read it again. Read it for yourself. If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. It doesn't say, I don't want them building a tower because Nimrod's coming up here to punch me in the nose. No, this would be pre-Yahweh. This is El. El being kind of a dick. The same dick that, flushed everybody with the flood. And again, he never told them that they were being evil. He just told Noah and only gave him the specs to protect himself because he didn't actually want Noah to convince anybody to get on the ark. We talked about that last time. And so here, they're building a tower. Again, what were they going to see with that tower? Maybe he was worried that tower would see his low-flying spaceship and they would realize that he's full of shit. He doesn't like any ideas that aren't his. You have to wonder. But if as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. What you have right there is basically an admission from God that he didn't want people to work together collectively because what would they need him for? If they could work together collectively and nothing is impossible for them, what's the need for him? He's not important anymore. So he throws a temper tantrum and confuses everyone's language, and if you go with what some really awful people think, he creates racism. That's not me, but the text kind of is like, God made racists so that people wouldn't work together. And that's like a real downer when you think about all the horrific implications that have come since then. So I usually like to end the sermons on kind of a high note, and I was really struggling here because this isn't a pleasant story. It's not a happy ending. That's how the Tower of Babel ends. Everybody speaks different languages and proceeds to hate each other for all of eternity. And apparently the reason was so that God would feel needed. Because again, it's all editorializing that said Nimrod was building... First, it's editorializing to say that Nimrod was the one that was building the Tower of Babel. And it's further editorializing to say that Nimrod was building the Tower of Babel so he could kick the gates of heaven in. Although, at this point, maybe it seems warranted. Maybe Nimrod was like, you know what? If we sit around and wait for him to flood us again, bad shit. I'm going up there. And so then God was like, no, you're not. Racism. So, yeah. So, it's not good. But if an evangelical Christian ever tells you that God invented racism, this is what they're talking about. It's not good. But it happened, according to their book. And I just want to put it in the way that it makes more sense to me that people were building a tower to protect them from another flood. And I've heard some Christians say that that actually is what God was mad about. That if they were building the tower to protect them from the flood, that means they didn't trust God, you know, the guy who just flooded them, and that they should have just trusted him. But again, there's no Bible commandment where God says don't build a tower. That's, remember, we talked, there's Bible building codes. None of them say how tall the tower can be. They just say if it's a house, it has to have a flat roof. So unless Nimrod was planning on putting a pointed roof on the top of the Tower of Babel, I don't really... Yeah, as long as the tower has a parapet, right? As long as the tower had a parapet, I don't see what God's so mad about. And those Bible building codes actually came after this anyway. So those are Yahweh building codes. That's from the Yahweh Construction Company, which is different than the L Construction Company, because apparently the L Construction Company just revokes permits for no reason and does it quite harshly. So this is my positive spin for you guys this week, because I didn't want to end on a downer. So we're going to end with a challenge. I say be more like Nimrod. Nimrod took care. This God dude does seem like a bit of a prick, doesn't he? Their book, not my words. I'm not editorializing this guy. I'm just talking about all the shit he does. And if you really think this guy loves you instead of you're part of his science experiment, and if you fuck it up, he will smite you, that's more what we're at. That's more where we're at, I think, unfortunately. But I say, be like Nimrod. He looked at the people around him and said, I need to help protect them. I need to find a way that if the worst fucking thing happens that we've ever seen happen, we'll be safe. Nimrod was trying to look out for others. And sometimes when you do that, people come down on you, and people shit on you, and people change your language and your race and create the ills of racism to serve their own agenda. But all you can do is be like Nimrod and try to help people and just try to do the right thing. And so the next time you encounter an ugly, awful, racist situation, I want you to remember something. That according to the good book, that's God's fault. So we have to fix his mess. People aren't naturally bad. God makes them that way. So thank you for being here this week. I really appreciate it. We're going to have a lot of fun in season 2. And this is the tip of the iceberg. If you thought this was a bit spicy, you know, me blaming God for racism, it's only going to go downhill from here. So I appreciate the hell out of you being here. It means the world to me. And be good people. Be like Nimrod. Help people who can't help themselves. That is my admonishment for the day. So thank you all for being here. We will be back next week. Next week is a little sketchy because I'm going to be going to see Lord Bale's wonderful band with our friends playing in Ohio on Saturday. And I think I'm going to spend the night at a hotel, but I think we're just going to do the Sunday sermon live from the hotel on Sunday morning next week. That is the plan. I will drop some notes in the Discord if anything should change that plan. But thank you for being here. We are going to do that next week. And trying to figure out the over-under of how the comment section turns out. Yeah. So yeah, thanks everybody. We will be back next week with some more fun. Yeah. Be good people. Be good people. Take care, everybody.